I'm Bea.
And I'm Sam.
And we're two best friends who like to talk shit about smut, wingspan,
and sometimes books.
Join us every Wednesday for a new episode.
Hello.
We're back.
We're back.
From our holidays.
I would say looking tan, but I'm not.
I am.
No, I was going to say you are. I'm not looking tan.
Sorry. Well, you didn't burn, so that's something.
I was really proud of myself.
Yeah,
I didn't burn. I know, really
very proud.
But we're back. So if we're a bit slow on the messages and comments on social media front, it's because we're catching up.
Yep.
We're getting there.
Yeah, catching up on our sleep.
We'll be back to, I say regular scheduling. Again, for you guys, doesn't make a difference. We've got a busy few weeks ahead, though.
We have.
I've got away again.
Leaving me.
For another week.
Yeah.
But then once beginning of September's over, we are officially back.
Yes.
Like, into the usual swing of things.
Back to schedule. But today we have a very exciting episode.
We do. Long awaited. I feel like we've been talking about this for quite a while now.
We have.
And because we've had basically nearly 2 back-to-back author interviews.
Yeah.
Only one gap in between. So, first of all, for those who listen to Amber v. Nicole, thank you so much. That series and interview's done so well.
Yeah.
We loved talking to her. She was just
she was amazing.
Yeah. And then, like we've spoken about it, but Quicksilver just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And this Callie Hart interview, she very kindly was so accommodating and slotted us in straight after the episode.
And it was so much fun. She was so lovely. Like, obviously, you'll hear it when you listen to this episode, but she was so, so kind.
Yeah, she was an absolute delight. So far, everyone we've dealt spoken to has been a delight. We're just really lucky. And she was such a delight. It was so, amazing being able to talk to her about just the process of writing Quicksilver. Because for those of you who, might not know much about her, she's more of a sort of dark romance, mafia romance writer. She's done a little bit of dystopian young adult, but this is her first ever dip into the fantasy romance genre as we know it, which blows us away because
it's amazing.
Yeah, this book is incredible. If you listened to last week, we just love this book. Yeah, just to get here her thought process and process of how she came to write this book is so
amazing. Yeah, so interesting. So enjoy the episode.
Yeah, because we loved it.
Yeah.
We'll see you now, and we've got a bit of a change of scheduling, haven't we? Because we haven't mentioned that yet. So next week, our Bookish Babes collab, which we previously said was going to be immediately after Callie Hart, has been delayed. It's still coming, but
in September.
Yeah, scheduling wise, you just had to shift it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is still coming in September. They're doing an episode with us. We're doing an episode with them.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, we have bumped up Powerful
and Reckless.
Yes. So next week you've got Powerful. Week after Reckless. Week after that, is it our Wingspan episode or no?
Can't remember.
Okay. We can tell you that we've at least got Powerful and Reckless come in. So if this is kind of your warning, if you want to listen along, you've got a week to read Powerful. It's teeny tiny.
Yes, it took me a day.
Yeah.
So.
And then another week to read Reckless, which again,
it
took me maybe 2 days. So if you want to read along, put those on your TBR.
Yeah.
And enjoy Callie Hart.
I'm Callie. So lovely to meet you both. Thank you so much for reading Quicksilver. I am the author of Quicksilver. I am the author of many other dark romance novels as well. I've been writing since 2012, but this is my first romantasy novel. I'm absolutely loving everyone reading and enjoying the story, and I'm happy to be here chatting with you guys today.
Awesome, thank you. And I think that kind of takes us really nicely into our first question, which is can you tell us, our listeners, a little bit about the other books that you've written, because you have such a prolific career prior to this book coming out, but like you said, in slightly different genres. So can you talk a little bit about the genres you have been writing in and the type of stuff that you've written prior to Quicksilver?
Yeah, absolutely. I started out in 2012 writing, I wrote a paranormal romance series that was not my finest moment. I mean, it was the first book I ever wrote, and I was just so in love with it. I still do love it. And that was under my pen name, Frankie Rose. and that book was called Sovereign Hope. And it was a 3-book series, and then I moved to YA dystopian for a little hot second, and then in 2014 I started writing dark romance. So I've written, MC, Mafia, a little bit of everything, dark academia, lots of like contemporary and dark romance kind of like combined. So a little bit of everything, honestly. I have a number of like high school based, they're not really bully, but dark academia, I think, is the correct slot to pop those guys in. So my Riot House series, Cricket Sinners, was my last big series that I released that, I found a really amazing readership for. And I think some of the people who have been reading Quicksilver have been discovering Riot House and Ren and Pax and Dash, which is really fun. So there's a little bit of a crossover there, and I'm loving it.
Awesome. Amazing. And I think as well, like when we, it sounds creepy, like when we were doing our research on you, but when we were obviously like doing research for today, like that's what we found so interesting, is that this Quicksilver is your first dip into like what's considered the romantasy fantasy genre. But I think from what I kind of read, what you sort of previously stated is that you sort of like wrote Quicksilver for yourself, really. That was just a book that you just felt like needed to be written. It wasn't sort of a like you said, a continuation of work that you'd already been doing.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't read romance very much. I read a lot of fantasy and science fiction for my own enjoyment. Like, and I like to kind of like keep my, I don't want to be influenced by anyone else's stuff. So I don't want to read romance, so that when I write, it's, I know it's come straight from my brain. When I was kind of like thinking about what to write next at the end of last year, I was just like thinking about which project I was going to put my energy into. And I've been writing dark romance and dark academia for such a long time that I was feeling really burnt out and really kind of exhausted and a little bit jaded on the genre. It's a great genre, but like to do one thing for so long, it gets tiring, and I was kind of losing my passion for writing. I was going through like a little mental health little thing too. So like I wanted to just do something for myself. And I had been planning that book for many years. It's been one of those things like I've been squirreling away at, like when I wake up in the night and I'm like, can't sleep. And I'm like, God, I got to write this down. Otherwise I'm never going to get back to sleep. So I had tons and tons of like little notes and scraps of paper kicking around that I'd collected and over the years, and I knew the characters inside out. And I was just like, I was speaking to friends at the end of last year, and I was like, well, one day I'm going to get to be able to write my passion project, my soul book. And they were like, what do you mean soul book? And I was like, the thing that's like sets my soul on fire that and they were like, you're an idiot, write that, don't be stupid.
Yeah.
Like, so I did, and I was like really daunted at first because I'm no stranger to writing big books or having big word counts on projects, but it was at a tricky time when between November and February there's kind of like a dearth of publishing. It's not like the best time to release a book because of Christmas and the holidays, and everyone's traveling and everyone spends their money on gifts and things like that. So it's not like super common to have a release during that time. So I knew that when I finished the book, I wasn't going to be able to release it for a while, which was kind of scary. And just how big it was and how big the world was. And yeah, it was kind of a little intimidating. But the moment that I sat down and started writing, I was like, oh my God, what was I worried about? Like, it just came out of me because I really knew the whole story very, very intimately. I knew the characters very well. So it was like breathing. It was so much fun. And some of the characters, especially, like the moments of like levity with Carrion and things like that were just joyful to write. It was just such a wonderful process. I loved every second of it. So I'm glad I gave myself the time to write that book. for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, we're glad as well,
Yeah,
because
we're
very happy, because it was when we saw it like recommended, and a lot of people were saying like this was your first dip into like the fantasy world, and after we got a few chapters in, like our jaws were on the floor, because we were like, oh my gosh, this is just like everything.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, I really wasn't. I didn't know what to expect, because my dark romance readers are avid and they love that genre so much, and like my MC readers and my Mafia readers as well are like, a lot of them are like, okay, we want more of this from you. We don't want anything else. Like, don't focus elsewhere. And I'm like, oh, guys, I need to be able to like dabble over here and over here.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh hell, I'm gonna have to find a whole new readership here. But I'm so like blown away and honored that I have, been able to reach people with it, and it's just been such a gift. So thank you guys for checking it out too. It being my first Romantasy project, it means a lot. It really does.
Yeah, no, we very quickly became very, very obsessed very quickly. So our next question is more, I guess, how can you tell us a little bit about like your writing space, how you write, is it something that you do, in an office at home? Are you more of like a public writer out in like coffee shops? Like, how do you get into that zone of writing, I guess?
Yeah, I'm so like stuck in my ways on it. Like I have to, I love like going and doing like admin or like, setting up marketing and things like that out in a coffee shop. But I need quiet and I need things to be in the exact right place, and like everything to be neat and tidy, and I need to be at my desk and when I'm writing. But I do travel a lot, so I am able to, I've written, I took a flight from Australia to London once and wrote like 10,000 words, so I can do it, but it's not my preference.
Yeah, of course.
I like being at home. So that may change. I don't know. Like, I think there's something to be said when you've been working from home for such a long time, like the concept of getting dressed for work and going to work. Because I think that's like, you're really stepping into that mindset of like, I'm going to accomplish something here. Whereas when you're at home, you can see like, a pile of clothes that needs folding and there's dishes in the sink, and you're like, oh, I'll just go do that. I'll just go do this. And it's very easy for me to procrastinate. I am the queen of procrastination. I'm a gold medalist. So any excuse, I will find it. And yeah, so I don't know. Maybe that'll change in the future. Maybe I have like an office space in my future that I can, make super comfy and cool, and I'll feel like I'm in, that show Younger that was on TV a while ago where they were in publishing something. I don't know, I can get dressed up nicely and go into my little office and feel like I'm doing that, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, no, but I think it's funny because like, so Sam's in the process of like buying a newer house, and she's very luckily got a double garage, which we have told her partner like, that's podcast studio now. Like you don't get that space. So we kind of like are in that mindset of like, we can make an office. Like we can show up to the office.
Oh yeah. Yeah, dedicated workspace is important, ladies. And yeah, like having a little she cave. Sounds fun.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we are getting bookish tattoos next week.
Yes, next week.
To celebrate hitting 10k followers on the podcast. If you were going to pick a tattoo to represent Quicksilver, what would that tattoo look like?
Well, congrats on 10,000. That's crazy. Well done. That's really cool. Oh God, I'm always so bad at this stuff. I don't know, because I am not going to be cliche and say a butterfly, because that is like one of the worst tattoos that a human being. Actually, I shouldn't say that.
I don't have any butterflies. No butterflies here.
Okay, thank God. It's just like, what are you doing, dude? I have like a giant moth tattoo on my leg, and it looks like a butterfly anyway. So I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't know. Like, I like subtle like things that like only a few people will understand. So like if there's like a quote from a book that you could like somehow tweak into symbol or a design that only like a handful of people will get. I love those kind of like little Easter egg tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. My next tattoo, I don't know. I've thought about getting like a whole bookish sleeve, but I love Red Rising, so I always think about getting Hail Reaper, which is just like that series is so good. Or I don't know. I've got like sword tattoos from Lord of the Rings, and a sword is always, you know, very apropos to Quicksilver because there are many swords in the first book, and there are even more in the second. So yeah. I don't know. This is a useless answer. I'm so sorry.
No. We spoke about it a lot on the podcast because when we obviously started reading it and like obviously the influence of alchemy on like the magic system, I said to Sam like, "Oh, I have an alchemy tattoo, by the way." I don't think she knew that, but I was like, "I have an alchemy tattoo, but I have copper, so I don't have Quicksilver or silver." But maybe like, I bet the alchemy symbol for like silver is probably something really cool that like could represent. I guess.
Yeah,
I have some symbols in book 2 as well with like actual diagrams for the chapter headers. So
that's so interesting. I can't wait to see. So again, more of just I guess a general question about like your writing, but what would be some advice that you would give to like an aspiring author like myself when it comes to writing?
It really comes down to just doing it, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people are really like they get in their heads about it a lot and they're like striving for perfection straight out of the gate, and that's not ever the case. So I highly recommend not self-editing until your project is finished and just sitting down, getting your butt in the seat and, you know, setting a goal like at least just 2,000 words a day, you know, like it's accomplishable, it's achievable. It's not gonna like take you all day, and you're making small progress, you know, like that's what really put me off when I first started thinking about writing a book, because I used to write like flash fiction and like little poems and stuff like that, and the idea of sitting down and producing something that was, you know, 100,000 words was like made my brain melt. So I was like, you know, it scared the hell out of me, and I definitely turned away from it more than once because of that. But it's amazing how quickly you reach that goal if you're just consistent. Consistency, finding a peer group who are like super great at giving honest feedback, who aren't just going to say, yeah, this is amazing. Like you want people who are better than you at writing around you to push you to try and, you know, become better yourself. Like I did that, and I still to this day I'm like constantly like asking people who I admire to read my stuff. I'm like, please help me, you know what I mean? And yeah, reading, like that's, you can't write if you don't read. So I think those are my 3 key pointers.
Yeah, no, it's a really good one. I think because I like have set myself I say really unrealistic goals, but I really thought in my head that I'd get like draft 1 beginning of this year. That was just not gonna happen, and then time kept ticking on. I was like, but I'm not doing, like you said, anything daily to like make enough of a dent. So my little like reminder popped up, and it was like 6 months into the year and you need to write like 550 words a day if you want draft 1 by the end of the year. And I was like, right, I'm going to commit myself to doing like a daily diary on TikTok where like I just go on and say, yes, did I hit the word count? But like you said, it's just getting your butt in the seat and doing it that like makes that difference. And then all of a sudden after a week, you're like, oh, I've done like 6,000 words, you know, and it's surprising.
Yeah, it's you know, it's like weighing yourself if you're like trying to work out or something like that. Like I never weigh myself daily anymore because it's so disappointing, and you're like, but if at the end of the month, you know, when you take stock and look back and you're like, oh, okay, so that wasn't for nothing. Like, you know, there are very visible results here. I love doing that. Like I have weekly and like monthly goals. There's a couple of different like word count trackers that are really great online. I'm trying to remember the name of any of them right now. I'm gonna have to like, I'm gonna think about that and come back. But there's one that's like something page.
Okay.
I'm not helping right now. But it's a really fun like tool. As soon as I remember, I'll like email it to you. But you know, you put in your goal and you put in like whether you want to work on the weekends, like when you want to like reach your goal by, and then it'll like chart it for you and tell you exactly how many words you have to write every day. And you can say, okay, I want to be consistent and I want to write the same amount every day, and it'll split it up like that for you. Or it'll be like, you know, a crapshoot, and one day you'll open it and it'll say you have to write 380 words today, and you're like, cool, I got this. And then the next day it'll open up and it'll be like, okay, you've got to write 2,300 words today, and you're like, oh, okay. But it kind of makes a game out of it, and it's fun. But there are so many word count like pieces of software that are like really like, you know, gamifies writing and makes it really fun. So not that writing is a chore, but you know what I mean? Like it helps to remain consistent and to like be excited to record your word count at the end of the day, which I think is one of the best parts.
How many books would you like the Fae and Alchemy series to be, or how many are you sort of projecting the series to be at the moment? Yeah,
so right now it's 3, and you know, I'm taking stock at as time goes by. Like perhaps there'll be an extra couple of side character books. I've been talking about that since the beginning, so that shouldn't really be a huge like shock or anything, but I would love to be able to write some extra side character books for Carrion and, you know, one of the other guys. If, you know, maybe more, I don't know. It just depends. Like if people want to read it, then I'm going to write it. But that's a decision that'll have to be made further down the track. But for now, 3.
That's exciting.
Yeah, we love a trilogy. I feel like a trilogy is that like sweet spot, isn't it? Of like, because like that's the thing with fantasy differs maybe in other genres is we like it big. Sorry, that sounds quite crude, but like generally the, you know, fantasy series are really standalones or duologies. They're usually like a trilogy or you know 9, 10, you know, so many. But a trilogy is like that sweet spot, isn't it? Of like, you know, you get enough.
Yeah, and the beauty of like having side character books is that you get to revisit the faces that you've fallen in love with in the other books as well. So it's like seeing old friends again, which is lovely.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So again, it kind of like tags on to last question, but do you have plans to write a series outside of this world, but sort of staying in the fantasy genre now that you've like, you know, started in it? So do you think you'll continue writing in this genre, but not necessarily, like you said, within the Fae and Alchemy world?
Yeah, absolutely. Now that I've found my legs with it, and like, you know, I just it just scratches such an itch for me. Like, you know, getting to the world building is just so addicting. I love like the like magical elements that I get to play with here, and like the fantastical elements and the, you know, suspension of disbelief that comes with it. It's just a real escape from everyday life, which we all love and need, I feel like, these days. Now more than ever. So absolutely. Yeah, that's the short answer to that question. It's a definitive yes, because it's just so much fun, you know, and it's what I love to read. At some point, you know, I would love to be able to write just a straight sci-fi or a straight fantasy, like with less of a focus on romance, just for the fun of it. But that's a ways down the road. You know, I've got a couple of other irons in the fire right now with other series that are related, you know, in some aspect to this. So yes.
Yeah, I think that's definitely why we read fantasy, isn't it? It's like the whimsical, like lose yourself in like
100%
in make-believe land. Like
I think we sometimes when we get, and we've read a couple of books that are maybe a bit more of a crossover, but I think when we pick a book, like I don't want to feel like I'm sat at home, you know, you want to be taken completely out of it. And like you said, if like being a Lord of the Rings fan, like that's just, I feel like you just need that like element, don't you, to take you out of reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's something about just really epic fantasy that, you know, just makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand too. You're like, there's such rousing moments in these, like some like Lord of the Rings, like how many times like are you just like so moved by what's happening, like the battle scenes and like the emotion between the characters and the beautiful like family that they create. Like it's just like such a beautiful experience that takes you out of yourself, and you don't really feel like an observer, like you feel like a participant, which is just incredible. That's what we all strive to feel when we read these books, and it's just it's an addiction, and one I'm not planning on giving up. So.
Yeah, and we will be on that ride with you.
We will be here.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you.
Where did the name Kingfisher come from, or what was the inspiration behind Kingfisher?
You know, I've seen some really angry people on the internet about this name, and I'm like, God, guys, calm down. Like, it's just a name. You know, he's always just been Kingfisher. You know, I've been planning this book series for a really long time, and, you know, Quicksilver is the tip of the iceberg with this story. You know, there is so much more to come, and I'm not going to ruin anything. I'm not going to say anything, but his name is Kingfisher. It always has been. In Avelia, names have meaning. That's all I can say. Yeah, you know, like I see people. You know, every book is polarizing. Every book, you know, you're always going to have people who love it and always going to have people who hate it. And, you know, if people don't like his name, then that's fine. That's totally fine. But yeah, I get that it's a weird one for sure. Like I do understand that, but I love that, honestly. Like I don't, you know, I see so many comments too about fantasy books in general, not just mine. You know, why do they have to have these like crazy, stupid names? Why can't they just call them like, you know, David or whatever? And then people are like, are you insane? Like, do you really want to read about like this really hot, smoking hot, like Fey warrior called, you know, Bob, who's like no one cares like about Bob. They want to read about, you know, someone who sounds a little exotic and different and like, you know, out of this world. So I love his name, and I like that it gets shortened to Fisher. There isn't much more I can say.
Okay. We love it though. Like we love both. I love that it's so unique, it's so magical, but then being able to abbreviate it to Fisher gives him as a character like that more casual element, you know, like it's, you know, it's kind of evident that only friends or close friends refer to him as Fisher. So I think it works perfectly because it serves like both purposes. And like you said, you like, it's like, for example, like, would Legolas be Legolas if he was called like Simon? You know, it doesn't have the same effect, does it? You know?
Simon's a bad name.
Yeah, we love the name Simon, but maybe just not for a Fey warrior.
It's true though, yeah. Like, and I did love playing with that element in the book because, you know, everyone are calling their swords these like very mystical or like, you know, grand names, and then Carrion turns around and calls his sword Simon. And I thought that was funny as fuck. And I'm like, you know, I was like giggling away to myself because I was being an idiot and I knew that people were going to be doing this anyway. But yeah, like you're right. There, you know, there was thought behind the fact that his name could be shortened. There is thought behind it. There is reason behind it. So
again, we kind of just touched on this a little bit, but with as much as you're able to tell us right now, are you able to give us or describe book 2 in 3 words?
Total fucking mayhem. That's it. That's all I can say.
That's the best. That is the best answer.
We ask this every interview. Like the 10 out of 10 best one we've ever had. Yeah.
Okay, good.
no,
it's nothing, and I'm so sorry for that. But like, I cannot. Like, you know, there are so many moving parts in this book. Like, there is a lot going on. The dynamics between the characters are just like amplified tenfold. Like, it is all gas, no brakes. roller coaster, total fucking mayhem. So
oh my gosh,
that's so exciting.
That is literally so. I feel like you said it doesn't tell you much, but I feel like it also tells us everything.
Yeah.
Like in both. I feel like we'll probably finish book 2 and be like, that is the most accurate way you could describe that book.
I hope so. Remember this. Come back to me.
Yes,
absolutely.
That's so exciting.
Where did your world building and magic system inspiration come from for this book? Because it's quite unique. We haven't really read any. The Quicksilver element of it is very unique.
I don't know. I think maybe, you know, part of it's like stuff that I dreamed. I think it was actually a nightmare at first. Like I think I had this like, this was back in like 2020 or something. I had this like nightmare where I was kind of like drowning in this like pool, and it was like metallic-y, and I was like, woke up and sweating bullets, and I was just like, that wasn't fun. And then I was like, but it could be. I don't know. With the alchemy, like alchemy's always fascinated me, and I love that huge tie-in. You know, there are a lot of elements with this book that are, you know, the Quicksilver itself is like, you know, hearkening to Mercury, which, you know, is a huge part of alchemy. And that ties in with what happens with Quicksilver, like, you know, alchemists and, you know, scientists in the 18th and 19th century poisoned the hell out of themselves with mercury before they realized that it was highly toxic, and like, you know, it drove them crazy. So that's why, you know, like that ties in with Fisher, and like, you know, the little bit of madness that colors his day is in there as well. And it just really interested me because there are so many really fun, cool ways to incorporate alchemy and magic, like to really bond those two together. And I love that alchemy is also about transmutation. It's like not just, you know, originally the alchemists were trying to change like regular everyday items or chemicals or, you know, herbs, whatever, into gold, and into something valuable. And it was about evolution and transformation. So it's not just like alchemy of physical items. It's like alchemy of the soul, where the, you know, these characters are really evolving into different people and like stepping into power in some respects, or softening, or you know, stepping into new roles, like where they're, you know, if they're like an heir to a throne who has been trapped in another realm for a couple of millennia, you know. It's all about evolution and change and growth and coming to power, you know. And that's certainly what's, you know, a huge theme in book 2, because, you know, Ceres's role now, like, wow, like her evolution as a character is only just beginning, and alchemy plays such a huge role with her in book 2. But I can't say much more than that. But yeah, so much fun, like making alchemy like and magic bedmates, and finding really cool fun ways to make that jump off the page and be this hopefully beautiful experience. So fingers crossed.
No, it definitely does. I think we said this like at the beginning of this week's episode, is that it was, you know, considered a science for such a long time, but there's so much of it that gives you like a springboard, like you said, for that magical element. And obviously, like nowadays it's very much considered like a bit of a pseudoscience, but at the time it really was like a belief that was a possibility. And like you said, it's interesting on that like core belief of like, you know, sacrificing something for something else, like the equal balance system, how interesting that can be for for characters as well.
Yeah. I like also that alchemy also is like a strive for immortality, which is a huge theme in this book, the series, obviously. And the Philosopher's Stone element, you know, it's all alchemy based. So there's just so many different really fun, cool avenues that you can go down with a subject like that to it just gives it so much more depth, and I really wanted to have like a totally different, something that I hadn't read about before. That's what I wanted, just something like completely different that was interesting, like the lore was interesting behind it. It wasn't just like, a vehicle to get the story from one place to another. It was actually like an interesting part of a story that would hook, people's imagination and like take them on this journey. And there's way, way, way more of that in book 2, which I'm so excited to share as well. So
that's so exciting. Oh, I can't wait. So kind of touching back, like you said, about this being like your first official dip into the fantasy genre, like what was the most unexpected challenge you encountered while writing Quicksilver?
That's kind of a tough one, because writing the book was just a dream, like I've been waiting for so long that there were no like difficult parts of writing that book, which is just madness to me, because there's always an element of like wrestling with words sometimes to get them out on the paper, and I'd certainly experienced that with my last couple of books. I was becoming a little disenfranchised with what I was writing last year and the year before, and not that I don't love those books absolutely with my heart and soul, but this was like different. This was like breathing, and I was just like, oh man, it felt like coming home. It really did. I was just like, oh boy, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. I think I think the most difficult thing about writing a book like that is that you disappear into a world like that when it is a completely different world. And it's jarring when you're like, dinner's ready. And you're like, wait a minute. I am in the middle of a battle. I am slaying the foes, that I have been, and you're like, okay, I gotta make sure I, flip the veggies or something, you know what I mean? So like that's kind of like, and like just finding balance between, personal life and writing when you're so consumed by something like that. You do have to remember to come up for air. It's like, I guess a lot of people liken writing a book to like, childbirth, which is ridiculous. I've never had a child, so I can't really say, but if it were like, this would have been the easiest birth ever, you know what I mean? This would have been like the 10-minute labor and we're all done and at home later on that night. But typically, I think also what made this experience a lot easier is that because I knew so much of the beats and the plot points of the story, I really wanted to be meticulous with it, so I sat down and I plotted everything very, very intensely. And I have never done that before in my life. So, I've definitely learned that about myself now, and I highly recommend to any pantsers out there who are just winging it like I have for the last 12 years. It's way better this way, guys. Yeah. But you know what? That's so subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really subjective, like, some people just hate pantsing and would never dream of it. And then some people are, conversely the other way. So it just, and maybe next time it won't work as well for me, but, I have this whole thing like down to the minutiae plotted out already. So I don't think I'm going back, because it's lovely. I now pick up, my next card off the top of the deck, and I'm like, oh, it's like a nice surprise. I'm like, what am I writing today? And it's all there for me, like, and the context and the purpose and the emotion that you want to drive and da. So it's just like, this makes my job so easy. So I'm definitely going to be doing that in the future, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, no, I think I was like fell victim to that, is that I just was pantsing for a long time, and then actually a friend of ours from another podcast, Paige Tinners, who's also writing her first novel, got me onto, like, I don't know if you've ever seen them, but like a deck of cards that literally is like to plot your novel. So you literally like follow, so you like stick them all to the wall, and they go, you know, vertical and horizontal, and then you effectively post-it note in between, and they're all prompt cards, and it's not necessarily like scene for scene, but it's like character questions. And I sort of finished it, and well, you saw like the haul, didn't you, a few days later, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of done. I was like, oh, so I need to actually finish writing it, but you don't, because you're just writing off these post-it notes and all that stuff is in your head. You're like, oh, of course there's blah, 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 blah. And then the next thing you're looking at, and you're like, wow, it's kind of,
I love that.
That's so cool. I'm not a pantser.
I love it. I love that. I've never been able to like put it up on a wall, but I think that would be so fun. It makes me feel like you're like one of those detectives in like a serial killer movie, and you've got like the red string and stuff, and you're like,
yeah.
Oh, well, last question.
Yeah.
So we ask this to every author that we sit down with. What's one book outside of any of your own that you will always recommend to people? Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying this week's episode.
If you're looking for more A Pod, a Smut and Wingspan content, head over to our Patreon, which is now live,
where you'll find monthly bonus content and have the chance to have your say in what we release on the podcast.
Subscribe and have a listen. We've got a full episode of all the books that we would recommend to scratch the ACTA itch.
But for now, enjoy the rest of this episode, and we'll see you soon.
I love Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater. It's an older book, and it's YA. There's no spice per se. There's like, you know, Fade to Black kind of deal. But Maggie Stiefvater's writing is just absolutely beautiful. And she, you know, when I'm feeling like I'm, you know, laboring a little bit in my own work, or I'm like getting a little bored, you know, I'll pick up one of her books, any of her books, and I'll open it to any page, and I'll read that page, and I will be immediately inspired, because it's just poetry. The way that she writes is just stunning, and you know, I'm always then going to be like, I want my words to come off a page like this, and it just lights a fire under my ass like nothing else. She's a phenomenal writer. I don't know if you've read any of her books. The Raven Cycle is really good. I think they're turning that into a Netflix show right now. Yeah, she's just great, you know, like, apart from her, you know, I mentioned Red Rising earlier. I actually listened to the audiobooks of that series, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm like now treating myself to the luxury of reading it on the page, because I want to see, you know, the architecture of it on a piece of paper. But wow, like Pierce Brown is the author of that series, and he is phenomenal. Like, talk about a master of, like, you know, a story arc. Like, it very impressive, very, very, very cool. 10 out of 10, highly recommend. But if we're talking like romance or something like that, oh boy, like I say, I don't really read a lot of romance, so it's tough for me. There are so many amazing writers in the community right now, indie and traditional. I'm trying to think. I read Laura Thalas's series, The Four Horsemen. I think it's the Four Horsemen series. I'm assuming that.
We just got sent that, so it's on our TBR. It sounds so good.
Really good. Yeah. I think I read Pestilence first, which was really good. And I was like, this is a hard sell, guys. Like, how am I supposed to fall in love with a guy who's like, you know, like infecting people with plague and murdering billions of people? And I'm like, yeah, she did it. That's impressive.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a really cool series. I haven't finished it yet, but I've read a couple of them and I really liked them. Her writing style is great. There's just so many amazing books. I mean, TikTok as a tool for, you know, adding books to your TBR is really dangerous, because it's so easy. You go on there, like 5 minutes later, you've got 10 new books sitting on your Kindle, and you're like, well, that was expensive. It happens to us too, you know, like it happens to us too.
Yeah, 100%. We are like both well, I wouldn't like we only got into the romantic, so we're quite new as readers to like the romantasy genre. So I was a reader as a child and then basically stopped after university and just struggled to find like that. I just felt like fantasy, like I was like you I was a fan of Lord of the Rings, but then I just found like I don't know, when you read so much and I just couldn't find like that. I was missing something and I don't know if I ever knew it. I needed a romance element because I'd never read romance. And then I kind of fell into book talk through TikTok and was getting all these recommendations and I was like, well, maybe I give one of these a go. And then I mean, the rest is history. And you were much more of a consistent reader than I was in romance, but not fantasy.
Yeah, so I was the opposite.
Yeah. And then I just nagged you enough.
Yeah, that I was like, I'll just read it, whatever the book was, and then
here we are.
I love that. I love like because it is such a like it's a gateway drug, right? Like you know, if you're a fantasy reader or a romance reader, and then suddenly you like get a little taste and you're like, actually this is cool, and then suddenly you're like off on this adventure it's mind-blowing how many amazing books are out there and how many like realms we disappear into. Like, in my mind, each one of these books is like the Quicksilver portal, taking you to a different realm, and it's so fucking cool. It's like the most fun ever. Like I would never choose, to sit and watch television or watch a movie over reading a book, because your own imagination is always going to be 10 million times better than something commercial like that.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I think nowadays the only time I ever do it is when there's been a book adaptation. Yeah, I feel like I feel like I need to just experience it to like, but I agree with you. I'm like that as well. I feel like I never knew from my ADHD brain that reading was the answer. Like I felt like I'd never unwind watching television or movies. Like I just couldn't, I love them and I love some of my favorite movies, but I can't watch new things. And then, my husband always says to me, like, does reading like battle scenes really relax you? And I'm like, yeah, it does. It does actually.
Yeah. And it's not, there's like, those moments in books where like, I remember I was reading Wool by Hugh Howey. I don't know if you guys have read that. They made a TV series out of that, Silo. Yes. And there's a scene in that book that hasn't come out on the TV, so I won't talk about it. It's going to probably be in the next season. And it was one of my first books that I read, like, in my mid-20s when I started reading again. And I was, like, literally on the edge of my seat, like, gripping the... Like, and I was so anxious for this character and so worried and concerned about what was going to happen. And I was like shouting by the end, and I was like, holy hell, like I haven't had this experience before. And like just that relief afterwards when, kind of everything's resolved. Like, and that it's the same thing with battle scenes. Like it's so rousing to me, I get like the goosebumps on my arms, and I'm like, the camaraderie and like, the leadership and like, the support that the guys show to like their leader and things like that just gets me every time. And like, oh man, I love writing that stuff. It's so much fun.
First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. We honestly appreciate it so much. And I think we said to you earlier, like, this week's episode has just gone
it's been
crazy.
Amazing. Yeah, like crazy. The reaction to the Quicksilver episode this week has been incredible.
Yeah, I keep texting Sam every day, like, because Sam, well, I say you worse than myself, but we are serial checkers, aren't we? Like we're just like this. Like,
how many listeners have we had?
How many listeners? And I texted earlier, like, I can't believe, like, how many of our listeners, because we obviously were, quite new to reading it, have all like jumped on the bandwagon, and we're like, oh my gosh, like there's just so many people here that love this book as much as we do.
Amazing. Thank you. I mean, I haven't listened to it yet. I haven't had a chance. I meant to go. I was going to the gym yesterday and I was going to listen to it there, and I didn't get a chance, but I'm going today, so I'm like so excited. I'm so glad it's done well for you guys.
It has. Yeah. A lot of our like book talk friends are just we just every comment, whenever we post a clip, every comment is just like, we're obsessed with this book. And we're like, yes we are too. Like, we're obsessed with this book. Like, yes we are too.
Thank you. Yeah, you know what? I really didn't think he was going to do anything at all. I was just like, oh, well, you know, if a few people read it and like it, then that's great. And if not, like, I had the time of my fucking life writing this book, so it doesn't even matter. And it's just one of those Hail Marys, you know, you just send it out into the world and be like, you know, I surrender to the universe. Like, you know, it happens, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And I'm so incredibly grateful to all of the new readers that have come to this thing. Like, you know, it's a show of trust that, you know, people haven't read me before, or, you know, this is my first attempt at fantasy and romance. So, like, it's deeply humbling. And I am feeling very blessed and very, very lucky and very grateful. So thank you guys too, because I'm sure you'd never read my stuff before either. It is a show of faith, and I'm so grateful.
So that was our interview with Callie Hart. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed recording it and speaking with her.
Yeah, I mean, she was we didn't expect anything less, but she was an absolute delight.
So nice. And so cool.
Yeah, I want to be Callie Hart when I grow up. It felt like, you know, when you're in school and you're talking to, like,
the cool kid.
Yeah, like someone else in your year that's, like, really cool, and they, like, acknowledge you, and you're like, wow, like, so-and-so.
Fangirling.
Yeah, so, Callie Hart acknowledged us. We're big fangirls. But, yeah, like, we loved talking to her. That was such an interesting episode. And
it's made me so excited for book 2.
Remind me of the 3 words she used for book 2.
Absolute fucking mayhem.
We asked that question every author interview, and this isn't bad mouthing the ones you had previously because they've been good. But she said that, first of all, with her chest.
Yeah.
There was no hesitation. Like, it was just amazing.
That's the best answer we've ever
had.
Yeah,
it is. Sorry not to like hate on the others, but that was the best one we've ever had. I'm absolutely like gasping for book 2.
Yeah.
Just to remind you of the next 2 weeks' episodes. So we've got Powerful coming out next week, and then Reckless the week after. So you've got like 2 weeks to read those if you want to join us on our review of those. And obviously our Powerless episode is already out.
Yep.
And then we've got some plans from then on out, but not anything.
Yeah, we've got a few collaborations, and we've got a few non-book reviews. So still obviously in the bookish world, that's what we do, but we're just trying to bring you different content. So it's not necessarily just a book review.
Yes.
We're doing some fun, like, comparison episodes and talking about some fun different things.
And having some people on that are not necessarily authors.
Yes. We've got some fun collaborations to come.
Yeah, more to come on that. So, yeah, we hope you enjoyed Callie Hart as much as we did. And we'll see you next week for Powerful.
Thanks so much for listening.
Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at A Pod of Smut and Wingspan.
See you next week.
Bye.